Okay, so we're reading the poem for the narrative events, trying to pinpoint at least three distinctive narrative moments in the poem. They don't always have to be plot events, they can be distinctive changes in some fashion. So we're looking at the opening. The skin cracked like a pod. There never is enough water. Imagine the drip of it, the small splash, echo in a tin mug, the voice of a kindly God. Now, what you can see is this very distinctive opening couplet that is simply a description of the absence of water, a scenario of drought. So the opening setting in that first couplet is drought, but it's drought without an end. There never is enough water. And then we have a shift in subject matter here, where the reader is being asked to imagine the drip of water. Imagine the drip of it, the small splash, echo in a tin mug, the voice of a kindly God. Sometimes the sudden rush of fortune. So there's a shift between these two stanzas. So we have in this poem a very sort of fortunate, clear change of subject and content from stanza to stanza. So we go from the opening, where there's the opening setting is a drought with no end. And then direction from the speaker of the poem for the reader to imagine the sound of dripping water. So we start with this drought, and then the speaker asks us to imagine these tiny little droplets of water. But then we have a really distinctive shift. The voice of a kindly God, and then sometimes the sudden rush of fortune. The municipal pipe bursts, silver crashes to the ground, and the flow has found a roar of tongues. From the huts, a congregation, every man, woman, child for streets around, butts in with pots, brass, copper, aluminium, plastic buckets, frantic hands, and naked children screaming in the liquid sun, their highlights polished to perfection, flashing light as the blessing sings over their small bones. Now this whole section, this whole second half of the poem, I would say, is two sentences. But I would say that there's a distinctive change between the two stanzas. So let's look at this big central stanza, the third one. Sometimes the sudden rush of fortune. We have this immediate change in subject matter here. The sudden rush of fortune, the municipal pipe burst, silver crashes to the ground. It should make you feel, when you're reading it, quite frantic. It's quite a frantic, energetic stanza. And it is, the description here is of the explosion of the pipe, followed by a mad rush for the water. So the third stanza is this massive explosion of water that happens by chance, and then the villagers in this slum frantically panicking and trying to rush around for the water itself. Now, the final stanza, as you'll be able to see, is not a separate event. Child for streets around butts in, and there's this image of all the people in the town, in the slum, piling round this particular burst water pipe. But there's a distinct shift in tone, I think, in this final stanza, and it's a much more ambiguous, uncertain tone. There's this sort of outburst of joy and energy in this middle third stanza, and then the final fourth one, there are naked children screaming in the liquid sun, their highlights polished to perfection, flashing light as the blessing sings over their small bones. There are basically a number of different phrases in this conclusion that complicate whether we can see this as a good thing. And so the final section is a change, not a narrative event, but a shift in tone. It's an ambiguous moment of blessing, as the innocent children seem both joyful and suffering in pain at this moment in time. So we've got these two sentences that make up the final two stanzas. This big, lengthy middle stanza, and then this final short stanza. But really, at this point in time, the single event is not what's important. It is the shift in tone that happens here across this final stanza, and naked children screaming in the liquid sun that marks this final section as being distinctive. So what this tells you is that these moments that we try and track at the beginning, the narrative moments, it isn't always a change in event or subject matter that you want to be looking for. Sometimes there is a distinctive shift in tone that can be responsible for pinpointing a distinctive moment. Okay.